Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 4 English lesson on adverbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. We're doing grade 4. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of adverbs. All right, so we're doing adverbs. Our chapter is adverbs. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 4. And then the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of adverbs. We're going to identify adverbs. And use relative adverbs. So that is going to be our chapter for today, as well as our lessons. Identify adverbs and to use relative adverbs. So yes, this is a continuation of our previous lesson on adverbs. So now we're just going to continue with adverbs. All right, so when it comes to adverbs, right? And then we can say an adverb is a word, sorry, that tells us more about a verb, right? Adverb, right? It's a word that tells us more about the verb. So with adverbs, it tells you when, it tells you where, and it tells you how. So adverbs, once again, it tells you, it's a word that tells you more about the verb, and it will tell you how it happens, when it happens, and where it happens. That's an adverb. And when we find out how, when, and where, we're going to look at a few examples now of how we can identify how an adverb does something, where, and when. All right. And some adverbs that tell us how. Remember, we said some adverbs tell you how, it tells you when, it tells you where. So some adverbs it tells you how. And the adverbs that tells you how, these adverbs they usually end in ly. So adverbs that tells you how something is being done, that usually ends in ly. So how something is being done, it ends in ly. So now the question can be, how does she run? Remember, run is a verb, right? So run is a verb. So how does she run? Run is the verb. And remember, with adverbs, it tells us more about the verb. So how does she run? And we can say she runs quickly. So quickly is our adverb and it ends in ly. She runs quickly. That's the adverb that tells us how she runs. She runs quickly, right? I rush hurriedly. I left hurriedly. Or just words that tells you how something is being done. So quickly tells us how she runs. All right, then the next one says some adverbs tell you when something is being done, when the action took place. When does he leave? When does he leave? He leaves soon. And soon is our adverb. Soon. And the next one, an adverb that tells us where. Where do they play? Where do they play? And we can say they play outside. So where? Outside. So these are our adverbs. And they tell you how, they tell you where, and they tell you when something happens. And once again, we said some adverbs that tell you how, some adverbs that tell you when, and some adverbs that tells you where. And adverbs that tells you how, they usually end in ly, like quickly, hurriedly, sadly. Then we have adverbs that tell you when, like soon. And then we have adverbs that tells you where, outside, or where something happens. And if we look at a few more examples of adverbs, right? And then adverbs that tell us where, that tells us how, right? Another word for adverbs that tell us how, they usually say the manner in which something is done, how something is being done. We said we can use the word quickly, can be done easily. Remember, it ends in ly. Gladly. We even said sadly, angrily. We can say roughly, and patiently. I patiently wait on something or someone. So that is a few examples of adverbs that tell us how. And remember, we said adverbs that tell us how, they usually end in ly. Adverbs that tell us how, they usually end in ly. And then we have adverbs that tell us when. And adverbs that tell us when, a few examples of adverbs that tell us when. We can say it's the same as time, and that is when something takes place. It can be tomorrow, it can be soon, it can be now, it can be later. This is not when something happens later. Now, we said soon. It can be tomorrow. Today, something happens. Tomorrow, yesterday, tonight, already. You can even say then, next week, last month, next month. Those are words that tells us when. Later, now, tomorrow, today, already, then, next week, next month, last month. Those are words that tells us when. And then we have adverbs that tell us where. And adverbs that tells us where is basically the place. It can be outside, can be inside, can be downstairs. It's where the action is taking place. Can be away, can be above. These are just but a few examples of adverbs. Can say it's here, it's there, right? And that is but a few examples. Then we also have outside examples that tells us where something takes place. And once again, these are our adverbs. And remember, adverbs, it is a word that tell you more about the verb. It's the same like adjectives. Adjectives tells us about the noun. It describes the noun. It modifies the noun. Whereas with adverbs tell us again more about the verb. All right, and once again, before we continue, we're going to say that adverbs is a word that tells you more about the verb. And with adverbs, it usually tells us where, it tells us when, and it tells us how. Adverbs that tells us how, it usually ends in ly. It's like saying it's the adverb of manner, how something is being done. Adverbs that tells us when, right? It's like saying adverb of time, the time of day, the time when something takes place. And where is like adverb of place that tells you thing basically where things happen, where they do something, where the action takes place. And that is basically adverbs. And then we also have relative adverbs. And relative adverbs, it introduces a dependent or a relative clause that describes a noun. So a relative clause or relative adverb introduces a dependent or a relative clause that describes a noun. And when it comes to relative adverbs, right? The three relative adverbs, it is when, where, and why. So it is where, when, and why. That is the relative adverbs. And we are now going to look at where, the when, and the why, right? When it comes to relative adverbs, relative clauses, right? And the relative adverb, right? Where. The relative adverb where, it is used to describe a place. Where is the specific place? And if we look at an example, it says Chicago is the city where Jennifer was born. So Chicago is a city where Jennifer was born. And then the relative adverb when. It is used to describe time. Remember, we said where describes place, when describes time, and how describes manner, right? So, once again, here they're even telling us where is used to describe a place, when is used to describe time. And if we look at an example, right, of time, then we can say, I can't wait for the day when camp starts. I can't wait for the day when camp starts. And then we also have the relative adverb why. And the relative adverb why is used to give a reason. Like, why is this happening? Why is something taking place? Right? And an example of a relative adverb why, we can say, do you know the reason why Ellen left early? Do you know the reason why Basil, for example, left early? Now somebody would say, no, he needs to do this, he maybe has to do that, you know, that type of thing. Because you are now describing or telling us or giving us a reason why. And that is adverbs or relative adverbs why that gives a reason. We said relative adverbs when tells us the time, and relative adverbs where describes a place. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're first going to identify adverbs and then we're going to do our test. And remember, we said adverbs, it tells us more about the verb, and adverbs tell us how, it tells us where, and it tells us when. That's adverbs. And adverbs that tell us how, we say these adverbs usually ends in ly. Like for example, how did she run? Quickly, right? So quickly is our adverb. Then we have adverbs that tell us when. When did she leave? Soon. So soon is our adverb. Soon is the adverb that tells us when the person left. And then some adverbs tells you where. Where do they play? Where is the action taking place? For example, outside. Right? All right, so now we're going to our test where we are going to identify adverbs. It says select the adverb that tells about the verb in bold. So we need to select the adverb that tells us about the word in bold. It says, here's a hint for us. It says, where or how were supplies shipped? It says supplies were shipped south. Supplies were shipped south. So now we need to select the adverb that tells us about the verb in bold. How or where was it shipped? Is it option 1, supplies, or it was shipped option 2, south? We need to select where or how were supplies shipped. South or supplies? Which one is correct? Option 1 or option 2? All right. And if we were to select our answer, then yes, we can say the supplies were shipped south. So south is our adverb. So well done. South is correct. Let's look at the next one. Here they're giving us a hint. When does Laura imagine? It says Laura now imagines her future. Laura now imagines her future. So when does Laura imagine? Is it option 1, her, or option 2, now? Which one is correct? So is it option 1, her, or option 1, now? Remember the hint is when. When does Laura imagine? When does she imagine? Does she imagine her, or does she imagine now? Which one is correct? Does she imagine her or does she imagine now? It says Laura now imagines her future. When does Laura imagine her future? Is it option one, her, or option two, she imagines her future now? And if we were to choose our correct answer, right, that tells us when Laura imagines, and then we can say it's option two, she imagines now. It's like you're thinking about your future now. It's like, like, one day when I'm big, I want to be and I'm going to drive this car and live in this big house. And, I'm going to have all this money and I'm going to go shopping and I'm going to travel the world. That is imagining now. Thank you for answering. I actually appreciate it. Even though it's just you, so I appreciate it. All right, the next one says she visits them monthly. She visits them monthly. The hint is when or how does she visit them? When does she visit them? Is it option one, monthly, or option two, visit? When does she visit them? So, when does she visit them? Is it option one, monthly, or option two, visit? Which one is correct? Monthly or visit? When does she visit? And if we were to say, when does she visit? It says she visits them monthly, then monthly is our adverb. It tells us when she visits. Mr. Vega travels everywhere. Mr. Vega travels everywhere. We now need to say, where does Mr. Vega travel? Where does he travel? Is it option one, everywhere, or Mr. Vega? Where does he travel? Everywhere, option one, or do we just say Mr. Vega? All right, and if we would say, where does Mr. Vega travel? It says Mr. Vega travels everywhere. Then, yes, we will choose option one to say that he travels everywhere. Yes, because it is where. It's asking us where. So, everywhere is correct. Well done. All right, so everywhere tells us where. So, well done. How or when did Vivian choose a book? It says Vivian quickly chose a book. Vivian quickly chose a book. Is option one quickly that tells us how, or option two a book that tells us how? Vivian quickly chose a book. Yes, and if we were to say how Vivian chose a book, and then we can say she quickly chose a book. Option one, well done. Quickly is correct. All right, now we're going to relative adverbs, right? So use relative adverbs. And remember, we said relative adverbs introduces a dependent or relative clause. And relative clause, these three relative adverbs, they tell us where, when, and why, right? Where is used to describe a place where Jennifer was born. She was born in Chicago. When is used to describe time. When the camp starts. 3 o'clock. And then we have why. And why is used to give a reason. Why Ellen left early. She had to do her homework. She had to go somewhere. They had a family um, thingy gathering. She had to go wherever, right? So now we're going to our test where we're going to use relative adverbs by either saying where, when, or why. All right, we need to complete the sentence with the correct relative adverb. That is either where, when, or why. We need to say if it tells us where, if it tells us when, or if it asks why. It says, is that the rock climbing gym? Do we say when Maria goes climbing, or do we say where Maria goes climbing? Which one is correct? So do we say, is that the rock climbing gym when Maria goes climbing? Or do we say where Maria goes climbing? Option one, is it when? Or option two, is it where she goes climbing? All right. And if we were to choose our option, right? Oopsie. Is that the rock climbing gym when Maria goes climbing or where she goes climbing? And if we were to choose a correct one, we can say it is where. Because remember, they're asking, is that the one when, where she goes, right? Shows us the place, tells us the place. All right, so the next one says Flo's Diner. Do we say when or where Franklin works serves excellent fries? Do we say Flo's Diner when Franklin works or where Franklin works serves excellent fries? Which one is correct? Option one, when he works, or option two, where he works? Yes, and if we were to give the correct answer, we can say Flo's Diner where tells us where Franklin works. They serve excellent fries. Well done. Where is correct? All right, let's do the last one. It says, I'll see you Tuesday. Do we say when the robotics club meets again? Or do we say why the robotics club meets again? Which one is correct? I'll see you Tuesday when the robotics club meet again, or why they meet again. Which one is correct? When they meet or why they meet? And if we were to choose the correct one, then yes, we can say, I'll see you Tuesday when, tells us when the robotics club meet again. Well done. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on adverbs. We said adverbs, it is words that tells us more about the verbs, right? We have adverbs that tells us how, it tells us where, and it tells us when. And then we also have relative adverbs, and relative adverbs that also tells us when something happens, where it happens, and why, which is the reason that describes why something happens. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on adverbs. Thank you very much, grade fours, for joining the class. I really hope that you have a better understanding of what adverbs are, as well as relative adverbs, and how you can identify adverbs and relative adverbs. So, thank you for joining the class. Thank you for interacting, and I really hope you're going to have a good day further. So, till next time, goodbye.